It's good to see you too.
How are you? How's school
Oh,
been? Hi,
oh,
guys.
yo, what up? But no, school's been great. I just started back up, taking some business and marketing classes, just that jive, getting into that, taking a public speaking course. So I'm pretty excited.
Nice. That's so cool. I've been following your daily posts journey on social media. You're doing
Oh
really good.
yeah, it's a journey for sure.
It's very motivating. How many days is it? Like 100 days that you have to do this?
Uh, Today, yeah, I'm doing 100. Today is day 30.
Nice job. That is
So
impressive.
yeah.
Yeah, marketing is a golden thing. Like I'm in a construction industry and I'm not I'm one of thousands of I can do the work. I can if work comes to me, I can do it and do phenomenally, but I have struggled marketing. So if somebody who does marketing, like what you're doing, grab that skill, perfect it, and you'll be set up good.
Yeah, for
sweet.
sure. I'm so excited. Oh, Gio is joining us as well. Michael, you want to start us off? Introduce.
Yes. How's it going, everybody? It's good to see y'all. Um, wow. Yeah, we'll definitely have some time to talk more to at the end, but we want to give Edward some time to really speak today, so we'll get right into it. There's gonna be a lot of wisdom and knowledge, but I hope everyone's doing well. It's good. It really is so good to see all y'all. Um, we are actually Telos Hive now is the new name. So we're rebranding. We're going into a different direction of just kind of narrowing down and focusing on who we are as a community. It's almost been, it'll be a year and a half here shortly.
Huh?
And so it's been a really incredible time. We were Wellness Mavericks. We still have those roots, but we rebranded Telos, is a biblical term used, in scripture. Like it really means perfection and wholeness and oneness. And Hive essentially is just community. So we're just really rooting in what we're headed to and where we're going. And so it's really cool. We are a group of young adults who are seeking after knowledge and wisdom, who are just learning and open to learning in health and wellness and fitness and all these different areas. We're just open to learning. And I think the biggest thing about all of us is that we're lifelong learners.
Hmm.
We're all committed to a community of growth. And that's why we come on every other week. It's simple as that. We just come on to learn. And so tonight we have the privilege to learn from Edward, which is Gemma's father. If y'all didn't know, if you didn't catch the Zoom name, they share the same last name. So I had a really good time. We were actually down in Houston a couple weeks ago and spent some time with Edward and Anna, and it's really special. So we're going to be talking about the creation calendar tonight, and he's going to go into some really cool history and just um, the reason for the moon and sun and things like that, and seasons, and it's just going to be really good. And so, yeah, without further ado, welcome to Telos Hive. We've got some other retreat information. Maybe we'll talk about at the end. Retreat is looking like it's going to be end in 2026, more toward October, September. We'll probably do a poll, get some votes on what y'all are thinking. But we're connecting with a regenerative farm out in Woodlands, Texas, which is crazy. Gemma and I got to visit it. But we'll talk more about that another time. That's going to be really exciting. But without further ado, Edward, I'll hand it off to you. Thanks for coming, everybody.
All right. Well, thanks for this opportunity and the honor to speak with y'all. Looks like y'all are a pretty good bunch of people. Um, how familiar are you guys with the moon and the lunar calendar? Have you guys I mean, besides Gemma and maybe Michael, any of you guys heard more about it or
I have not.
have not?
Yeah,
Anybody else?
let's go with zero knowledge.
Zero knowledge. Okay. Well, that kind of helps me. So. We have, in the history of our existence, have gone through maybe like four or five different calendars that have been accepted as like the calendars that have been accepted by the world. Um, in ancient times, the people would always use the stars, the moon, and the sun to navigate and kind of determine where they're at in the year cycle. Is everybody here understand Bible and kind of read it, familiar with it? Yes?
Let's do show of
Yes.
hands. Just raise your hands or something.
Yes. Okay, great. Good, because I'll be referring a lot to it. Um, so the first place where we see it mentioned is in Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. That's where Elohim creates the lights of heaven would be the sun and the moon. Not just the light, because there's a different thing that's where it says light, behold, like let there be light. That's like a different conversation. But lights of the heavens, specifically, that's in reference to the earthly or to our um, I guess our existence here on on this earth, on this planet, I would say. Um, the interesting thing about the in Genesis 14, let's read that. Anybody have scriptures with them?
Yeah.
All right, pull up Genesis 1:14, read it for me.
Give me 1 second. You said Genesis 1:14?
1:14.
And God said, "Let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times in days and years."
In days and years. So let there be for signs, let them be for sacred times and days and years. So days and years, we begin to understand that we have 365 the revolution of around the sun. So that here it just mentions both two. It's kind of like in one verse, both the sun and the moon. The interesting part where here it refers to let there be for in other versions it says appointed times. Here in your version it says sacred times. So that word in Hebrew it means moedim or moed means appointed times. So basically these are the appointed the the moon will be used for the times when I'm going to appoint specific meeting times with you all. Um, and when we learn how to operate in that appointed time, then we can meet with him when he says to meet with him. The unique thing later on, if once you guys get more studying the scripture, you'll start seeing when the prophets, I think a prophet Ezekiel, he would often have on the new moon days, he would get a prophetic vision. So again, it was an appointed time. The moon would kind of sound it's refreshing, and he would be seeking the face of the Father, and the revelation and prophetic words would come to him on those days. Um, the moon basically is the star, the the time clock of heavens. So for us to learn how to use it and how to navigate it helps us to understand um, how to meet him at his time. Everybody familiar with well, they call it the Lord's Prayer or the prayer that Yahushua left when the disciples came to him. It says, "Teach us how to pray." So one of the verses, one of the words in there, he says, "Let your kingdom come and let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven." So there's something about when we learn to align our earthly timeline to his heavenly timeline. Um, the value of understanding his timepiece and lining up to his time clock begins to just unwrap beautiful things in our life. So I'm going to kind of touch on a few aspects, and then I'm going to ask you guys questions, so then I can kind of navigate it to where you guys are at. So the moon specifically is used for as moedim, basically for appointed times. The next time we see the conversation about appointed times is in Leviticus 23. This is where Moses begins to receive revelation from Yahuwah, and he says specifically, I want you guys to count the days, and on the first month, um, on the first month of the month of the Passover, which would be kind of, but when they came out of Egypt, he says that would be to you the first month of the year. So Leviticus 23. I'm not gonna read through it. I don't want it to be just a Bible study here. I wanted to kind of touch bases where it's kind of where it's written and where we begin to see it. Um, but those are the when he begins to spell out the different feasts: Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, Pentecost, festivals of trumpets, Day of Atonement, and Festival of Tabernacles. So all of those feasts, they speak of prophetic, let's say prophetic good news that the Father is speaking to his creation through the time and gatherings that he appointed from the very beginning. Israel just happened to be the first people that he started working with. Israel as a nation um, who came from Abraham through Isaac, and yet Jacob began to kind of multiply. Um, if we look at Deuteronomy 32, where he says all the nations have all the other nations he gave to the other entities, or we call them different powers. But Jacob, he says, I take it as my inheritance. So Yahuwah began to work with Jacob as his people. And so when he began to speak to them concerning the appointed times, he is basically telling his creation, the first family of the earth would be the Israelites, the times where the heaven lines up to the earth, and when the earth lines up to the heavenly, then there's something significant begins to happen. Um, tell you the truth, Israel, even Israel, as much as they are carriers of a lot of information, we have the scriptures, the Bible from the nation of Israel. Many of the Israelites they did not carry that or meet the Father in those times that He has appointed. And you guys, once you guys start looking more into the study deep into the scriptures, you'll start seeing that the Father would reject His nation because they would begin to celebrate or borrow the nation's celebrations to kind of plug in next to what He says to celebrate and what He says to honor. And he would tell him like he would reject them, says, "I hate your feast. You will be going into captivity and being captured by other nations because you guys have rejected my laws and my commands." I have I know I mentioned it when Michael and Evelina were here. Book of Jubilee. Anybody heard of Book of Jubilee? Yes. Awesome. So Book of Jubilee is one of the books that are it's in the writings of Israel. There's one mention of it in the scriptures, very briefly, but it's not something that's commonly even in apocryphal books in the Bible. It's not even in there, but it is one of the in one of the manuscripts of Israel. So in there, in the chapter 23, and I can share that book with you all. If you guys are readers or interested in reading more about it, I have a PDF book, and I'll share that with you. So it's basically it covers the same history line from Genesis to Book of Joshua, but it's more in format of Jubilees, which is in the years of 50s. Phenomenal read, but it covers a lot of historical points that are not all outlined in Genesis, but it does mention in there as perhaps it was more oral history that was also kept in some of the writings, but it wasn't part of the Genesis narrative specifically. But in chapter 23, I'm going to read you like maybe 5, 10 verses to kind of help to speak what I'm talking about. And I think actually this mimics to what you guys all are doing. Begin to look and kind of search out the scriptures, search out the truths about what was known before in the history past. But I mean, tell you the truth, for me being raised in a Christian environment, a Christian church, I had no clue about this until we actually started learning it ourselves. And in some ways, we were actually told not to look at those informations because they were considered extra biblical, because they're outside of the Bible, therefore they shouldn't be touched or read. Um, which I completely disagree with because that is not a proper way to grow or mature spiritually. All right, verse 15 of that chapter 23. Then they shall say, the day of our forefathers were many, even unto 1,000 years, and were good. But behold, the days of our life, if a man has lived many, are 70 or 70. And if he is strong, fourscore or 80 years. And those evil, and there is no shalom in those days, in the days of this evil generation. And in that generation, the sons shall convict their fathers and their elders of sin. So the sons begin to look at the ways of Yahuwah and begin to see that there's things in the word that our forefathers have walked away from and developed their own character, their own traditions, their own celebrations, and their own formats. Um, the sons shall convict their fathers and their elders of sin and unrighteousness, and the words of their mouth, and in great wickedness which they perpetrate. And concerning their forsaking the covenant which Yahuwah had made between them and him, that they should observe and do all his commands and his ordinances and all his Torah, without departing either to the right hand or to the left. And in those days the children shall begin to study the laws, and to seek the commandments, and to return to the paths of righteousness. And the days shall begin to grow many and increase among those children of men, till their days draw nigh to 1,000 years, and to a greater number of years that before was the number of days. And there shall be no old man, nor one who is satisfied with his days, for all shall be as children and youths. It's very interesting because this is also something that's mentioned in Ezekiel, in Isaiah, where towards the end of days that the lifespan of humanity will begin to increase. I'm not touching the moon yet, but it all interconnects. The concept here of studying the laws and the commands and returning to the paths of righteousness. The unique thing that we see that when we as people begin to line up to the heavenly, the heaven begins to respond in us and the earthly with its blessing. What does that mean? What I see is that, and like kind of what we read here, that the lives of the children who begin to turn to the paths of righteousness, not the laws, as in like how often in the church, the big thing that church is afraid of is so that we don't become legalistic and become just keepers of the law and the ordinances that are spoken in the scriptures, but not living the spirit of it. What it's talking about here is the fact that the paths of righteousness. Path of righteousness isn't just about truth. It's also about compassion, and it's about integrity. So it's truth always pairs with compassion. It's not just one-sided sword, I would say. Um, let's see. Um, Gemma, if you need to chime in, if you have a question that I need to, if you want me to kind of lead me, because
Yeah.
I can really veer off, and I
What is
apologize if I do.
No, it's good. This is so fascinating because this underpins the concept of the whole anti-aging thing that's so popular.
Hmm.
How are we pursuing that? And in the scripture, it spells out how we can literally gain access to it is by following his commands and his appointed times. And we will begin to remind our elders of the ways that they have fallen astray from the commandments of the scripture, not just the
Yeah.
Ten Commandments. It's about the times and seasons. So, can you tell us what is the benefit and the blessing of following the creation calendar? So, we
Okay.
know that
Yes.
there is a blessing, but what is that blessing?
Okay.
Yep.
Here's the thing, and by no means am I, well, I would consider myself an expert. I'm probably just a student as much as you are, just a little bit more, a little bit more read than you all. Um, so I will just share what I know and how I understand it. But don't look at it by any means like this is the absolute way to go. But I will share everything that how I understand it and how I perceive it.
Perhaps could you share also how you practice
Yes.
how you practice it?
So here, kind of the thing that what we saw once I understood the fact that okay, the moon is established for us as a timepiece. Because in the book of Daniel, it says that there will arise an entity as an antichrist type of entity who will desire to change times and seasons. And as I mentioned before, that throughout our history, different emperors from somebody like Caesar, we had Julius calendar, we had Gregorian calendar, who was a pope. We had a calendar under, believe it or not, what's his name? The French emperor, Napoleon. Napoleon, he had a calendar for a while, but they always try to mimic whatever is beneficial and what's priority to them. The interesting thing about those calendars is that they sometimes they mimic the heavenly bodies, but most of the time they still relate to whatever's happening in the business sense of the world, like in the worldly everyday thing. The moon has always been referred to as a timekeeper for the feast of Israel, um, and specifically the starting of the moon cycle would start with the Passover date. The Father didn't take Israel out um, until it struck that specific month, which was the month of it was the spring month in like our current Gregorian calendar, which would be around April, March. But when he took him out of Egypt, he told him this would be the first day, the first month of your year, and this the celebration of Pesach will be counted as your first month. And he says that at the beginning of the new moon, which is when the moon goes completely blank, says that will be considered for you the beginning of the month. So when the new moon starts, that's considered as we also referred in modern days as conjunction. That's when the sun and the moon they overlap each other, and you can't see the moon behind the sun because there's no reflection on it. The moment you begin to identify the first crescent, and by all days we actually have the first crescent is tonight. So this day is actually a great way to explain it. Um, so last night and then was identified as a new moon day. Tonight is identified as the first day of the month because we see a sliver of the crescent showing up. That is basically the counting, the first day of the month counting. Exactly in 7 days, we will be at the half of the moon, which will be a Sabbath time for us. And exactly 7 days after that, we'll be at full moon, which will be a Sabbath day for us. So every 7 days will be a Sabbath for us. And it's a time clock. It's a timepiece that's always repeating and it's always showing up. Once you learn how to identify it, you'll see that at the end of the month, sometimes it will be a 2 day new moon, sometimes it will be a 1 day new moon, which that means is that you do not see the sliver of the sun. I mean, the sliver of the moon. And that's all also seen in the scripture where they would actually appoint and celebrate. The new moon is considered as a not a Sabbath, but it's considered as a rest day or the day where family would gather together and they would share a meal. It would be like a corporate um, joining events and a very celebratory time together. All these feasts, they always circle around family and around commemoration of something that the Father has done in the lives of his people. I'm not talking about just Israel, but his people. So if you are becoming believers and you have been accepted into the family of the Most High, you are his people. So this is just because Israel was the first one to hear this doesn't mean that this is the Jewish calendar, and it doesn't mean that this is the Jewish feast. It means that they were just the first one to hear it, and now we can also partake of that what the Father began to share with his children on the earth. So the first of the first sliver counts as day one. So once we begin to learn and identify the counting, then you guys will begin to see that how the moon lines up to a specific events, and all the feasts are circled around where the moon strikes. For me, what became a lot more fascinating, and I really kind of got became fell in love with the lunar calendar, is when I started studying um, the death of Messiah. So the time when he was betrayed and given over to Pilate to be judged, was the preparation day of Passover. The Passover, so like it's not until the moon I saw like where I just thought it was like okay, Passover. They just said kind of they knew when the Passover was, but once I started understanding that no, it's the heavenly bodies, which is the moon when it struck beginning of Passover. That's when the Passover that Israel at that time they still celebrated by keeping the lunar calendar. So Messiah's death and resurrection was all mimicked by the heavenly bodies. It wasn't by nothing. That's why the moon was in full blown shining at the day of the day of his death on the Passover day, because on the after the Passover happens, we move into the feast, what's called Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is taking away all leaven and all the things that trip us up and harm us throughout our life. But all these feasts eventually begin to speak something unique to us. So once I saw just even that aspect of the Father didn't allow Yahushua to begin to antagonize the local groups until the timing where the Passover was happening, and they were antagonized by I guess I would call the demonic entities to try to get rid of him so bad. But both of it lined up to the point where he died and became the Passover lamb, um, and then basically that changed the history of humanity from that point on. Once I saw that, I understand that okay, there's a lot more in there that I don't fully comprehend, but the fact that the Father says, walk these out and honor me by celebrating these, I saw that okay, I'm on board. I don't know how to walk them all out. At first, early on, we try to look at the way that the Jewish people do it, and when we saw it, we saw okay, there's a lot of traditions that gets added on by the Jewish, especially like whether it's rabbinical Judaism or Messianic groups. They add a lot of their own flavors to it. That's not really scriptural. That is their flavors, and that's fine. They can do that if they wish. I, for myself and my family, I chose to see what the scripture says and begin to understand and learn and dig more about when we line it up our timeline under his timepiece and walk out his feasts under his time clock. We literally just sit there and try to understand and wait. What do we learn on these days? What do they speak to us? How prophetically do they affect us? Does it actually influence us in which way? Or what do they speak for us, say, going forward or prophetically? Like, where do we need to be? Um, we would always see certain levels of miracles and unique things happening on the days of on the feasts that happen under the um when we practice it on the appointed times. Let me say it like that. Um, so the way we walk out is walk out the specific timepiece of the moon is like I said earlier. Whenever the moon is in the first first phase, and we see the new moon. It commemorates the beginning of the month. That means that the Sabbath has already, the last month Sabbath has already been celebrated. We enter the new moon. That means there's absolutely no visible moon. The first crescent marks as the first day, and then we keep going into the 7 day count until the end of the month. Um, there's a lot more there, and I'll share some content with you guys where you guys can research a little bit more. But I encourage you all to, if this is a curious thing for you, and if this is something that you guys are interested in, the first place I would recommend you guys go to is, let me see if okay, there it is. Let me share this with you guys. All right, can you guys see this? Um, can you see this? Which counter does creation recognize? Creator recognize. Can you guys see that?
Yes, yes.
Okay, cool. I would recommend you guys go to this. It's basically creationcalendar.com. This is run by Troy Miller. He often gets into the uh, scuffles here on with 7 Day Adventists, which are basically they keep the Sabbath but on the Saturdays, and he often gets into the conversations there. But he used to be part of the 7 Day Adventist group, and then he walked out of that, and he just started observing the lunar calendar. I learned a lot. A lot of the stuff that I know, I learned from him and his content. On monthly here, he publishes a little newsletter that helps to us to identify. And he really just kind of goes through the training month by month. There's always small little training. He tells you how he identifies it, and he always encouraged all of us to observe it because from every part of the year, you guys will every part of the globe, there's slightly different crescent that you guys see. So sometimes like people in the southern hemisphere will see it slightly maybe a day ahead of us, and we will see it a day afterwards. But in reality, everybody's celebrating the Sabbath the same day, but as the moon shifts over, it could be the day before for that side of the world. It could be a day after for us, but it's only because of the date line. Because we have a date line, and here we're competing with kind of like the 24-hour cycle versus the lunar cycle. But I would encourage you guys to look at this calendar and not a calendar, but look at this website and just kind of really just dig in and learn, research more about it. Another really cool one is Torah calendar. This is a pretty fun one. This one they have built it a lot of the this is more of a Hebrew timeline dependent based out of Jerusalem. So this kind of helps you to identify like what is the hours in Jerusalem according to the day where it's at. So they go by first hour, second hour, third hour, fourth hour. So when you read the scripture and it says, and it was the ninth hour of the day, and then you look up here, oh, it means it probably like it was 6 o'clock in the morning. Or if it was like the first hour of the day, second hour of the day, it just depends where it's at, or the 12th hour of the night, so you know where it was at. But the cool thing with this one, are you guys able to see this, the Torah calendar one? Yes, okay.
Yeah, we got
Um, here, I was just kind of having fun with it. I'm like, I'm gonna put in my birth date, July 14th, 1982. And view calendar. It pops up whatever was happening and like what was going on that time. You can go all the way back to the days of Yahushua. Just type in 1 BC, July and whatever, and it will show you whatever where the moon was, where the sun was, and some of the events that were happening that time. Here it so happens that on the 14th, I just found out that today actually, there was a total lunar eclipse. That's pretty cool on the day I was born. What that means, I don't know, but it's kind of cool. Um, uh, so that kind of gives you like an insight into a little bit of how the moon behaves. I know that there's definitely an alignment that we don't know in the as we read books such as Book of Yasher, there is a conversation when between Joseph and his father, and Joseph and Benjamin, and they were talking openly about the knowledge of wisdom, what that was. And the knowledge of wisdom was basically ability to read the stars and understanding what the star mean in accordance to where we are on the earth, or finding specific things. For them, it was a common knowledge, and they just practiced it. Whether what they use it for is a different thing. I mean, it could be used for just kind of identifying how to lay things out properly. But there was definitely a certain amount of knowledge that was tied to that. Um, I don't go too much into give too much credence on the specific occurrences of heavens because I don't understand it. I think heaven understands a lot more, and it's trying to speak to us how for us to learn to walk it out, to kind of be in more in tune with what the heaven trying to tell us. Um, so the more you learn, perhaps the more insight you guys will be able to give to each other going forward. So take a look at this one as well. This is the Torah calendar. Um, let's see. Does anybody have any questions? Did I cover enough information that it kind of gives you a brief understanding? Is there something that you guys want to
Yeah,
know? Go
that's
ahead.
no, this is really exciting. I have more questions, more I guess more in depth about the difference between the Gregorian, kind of like the man-made things. I know we talked about a couple weeks ago about on a different call with Gemma. We were reading that book and it was talking about gadgets and gizmos and the things that man's created. Like we have all these things that man's created, but can you touch on something that, like for example, how the sun rises and sets every single day, and how the moon comes out, and how like this cycle is something man cannot change, the seasons changing, like things like that. Can you maybe some more history or wisdom or something on that of like the kind of how big of a deal it is that this actually happens and how this is actually magnificent and this isn't just like a simple little thing. Like this is a really big deal that the sun sets and then it rises and the moon comes out and then the moon tells us when the real month is happening and how it's perfect every single year and kind of how like I guess how the calendar we're on right now, like the Gregorian, the 12-month calendar we're on now, how it's not connected with nature at all. It's its own separate thing made by man. And how if we go back to basics of following the moon and God's calendar essentially, what that how that will benefit us and just how like yeah just maybe like the difference and what that really means to us now, if that makes sense.
Man, you say it a lot better. You should be speaking on this. You said it a
It's
lot
so
better than
funny.
I do.
No, it's so funny. No, just
No,
questions.
it's good. In
I said a
in
lot.
in
I
Israel,
can
no, it's
ask
good. In Israel, the way I how we learned about is basically the solar calendar and the solar function of it, which we have the 365 or 364 and a quarter day of the solar cycle. We're used to it. This is basically what Gregorian calendar is based on primarily. And in Israel, it was referred to as the king's calendar. So for some reason, they had the two separations where the solar calendar was always used by the kings. And in my understanding, we basically utilize it as a business calendar, basically for anything that we do business and we deal with the trading and everyday life, we're using the solar calendar. Um, the lunar calendar was used by the Levites. So that was a Levitical calendar, which is considered the Hebrew calendar because the Hebrew people were a spiritual nation, and they were to become priests for the whole world, so that people can come and learn wisdom from them. So they were given the lunar calendar, and that's specifically for practicing the appointed times and walking out the appointed times. and the festivals that have been given by the Father um, to us, to the believers, to celebrate and to walk out, to honor. And each one of those, once you guys start looking at each one of those feasts, you'll begin to understand the more value of them because they unwrap something unique that will be unique to you, but also unique to believers of the new covenant. Um, let's see. I have some things here. All right, so here's some of the things that I've kind of prepared, and I'm just gonna read it to you guys so you can kind of have the glimpse into what that means. So whoever is in charge, and basically on the earthly ruling plane, is in charge of the calendar. The calendar you observe tells you when to work and when to worship. When you worship tells heaven and the onlooking universe who you worship. So getting the day right is that serious. Rome has already changed the calendar 4 times. Rome changed the calendar in 153 BC, the first of the year from March 1st to January 1st. In 46 BC, when Julius Caesar ordered the Rome to no longer calculate the months by the moon, removing new moon days. Later in 321, Constantine adopted the 7-day planetary week in the place of the 8-day Roman Republican calendar. When adopting this pagan planetary week, he moved Saturday from the first day of the week to the seventh day, meaning that the current Saturday is the seventh day of the week only by the virtue of the pagan Christian Roman emperor. Lastly, Pope Gregory the 13th refined the Julian calendar in 1582, removing the 10 days from the calendar count. Um, and it is claimed that the order of days did not change in 1582, but does 7 days into um, is 7 days into 10 evenly. Now Rome is behind the fifth change. Rome is beginning to initiate a different calendar right now in our day and age. Um, so Daniel 7:25, there's a verse here that says, "Come out of her, my people, that you not partake of her sins." There's something about when because the earth will always, like, people will always be shifting and changing to try to control people. Because think about this. Our lives, even as much as we want to think differently, revolves about the weekends that are already set in place. The whole world kind of operates. We got Monday through Friday, and then we got the weekend, and we got Saturday. Sometimes people consider that as a Sabbath day, and they take that day of the week off. And then Sunday, that would be considered also Sabbath for majority of the other world, and they take that day off. Um, and a lot of our day-to-day stuff kind of revolves around this cycle of living. When you turn onto the clock of heaven, which is the lunar calendar, you begin to operate by what you observe. So you don't look at the calendar. The only time I look at the calendar is when I have people scheduled for business or meetings or contacts. I take it is more difficult to follow the lunar calendar when you have a 9 to 5 job that is specifically plugged into the Gregorian calendar. Um, for you to look at the heavenly calendar, it almost forces you to become a self-employed and having your own business because then you align your time clock. Whenever I worked for people back in Washington State. I would always tell them, I'm not coming in this day, but I will work through the weekend if you guys need to, because for them usually and nobody works on the weekends. But for me, I take the Sabbath off whenever the Sabbath is, and it could be in the middle of the Gregorian calendar week. So it could be our Sabbath could be Wednesday. Sometimes it could be Thursday. It depends when
Mhm.
the moon strikes the crescent or the moon strikes half or the full. That's the day we celebrate and we take our rest. And then we work 6 days full and do the work that needs to be done. Um,
So cool. That's what I'm telling you about.
It's sometimes it is difficult. Sometimes you have to align differently with people, and but what you will always see is that people will always pull you to break out of that rhythm of the lunar calendar or the lunar cycle. Um, the significance of it, let me see. For what I started seeing, like once we started lining up to observable calendar rather than um, how does it there's a two words. So there's observation and there's calculation. That's what it was. So the calculated calendar basically is it's already in place and we just follow it. It's already written like a year ahead of time. But observational, it could change because it depends when the new moon is. It's very predictable, but for us it's often we can't calculate the end of the month because sometimes it could be 1 day new moon, which is a day we set aside into you read, you pray, you spend time with your family, kind of uniquely separated. You can still work on those days, but they are separated. There's one new moon out of the year, which is called the Day of Trumpets. It's like in the beginning of the month of the tabernacle that announces the gathering of the people. That's one new moon out of the year that's considered as a Sabbath day, scripturally. Um, but other than that, all the new moon days are basically work days, but it is separated separately from the regular monthly days. Um, I prepared a few stuff here, but any questions? You guys have any additional questions? Did I not answer something that you guys want to hear more of? Here's one quote I really like. When a man who is honestly mistaken, man or woman who is honestly mistaken, hears the truth, he will want, he will either quit being mistaken or he will cease being honest. So whenever we come across something that forces us to change our traditions or something that we've been used to, but we know that's more of a right way, we have to answer this question to ourselves. We have two choices. We either correct our ways, or we just like, that's okay. I'm gonna just I'm just gonna keep going on with whatever somebody else is telling me or dictating in my life. So here we kind of it begins to separate the two people. Like you either become the followers of heavenly Father's appointed because he created it, he appointed it, and he wants us to fit under his rhythm. And then there's a man who's demanding and always pulling us to says, okay, this is the way, this is kind of like everybody's doing it. Why don't you do it this way? Um, so we always are getting pulled to two different areas. And this is what separates what I see separates um, people, his people, and the masses, the sheep from the goats. There's no judgment, and it's not the fact that like, oh, if you do this, then you're fine. No, it's just one of the things that he says he gave the moon to us for Moedim, basically for appointed times. And so when he sets up an appointment with you on his days, let's meet with him. Let's see what he has to say to us. That's kind of like the simplest of formats. And if you don't know how to walk it out, just read it and try to understand the best you can and learn from other people. That's completely great. But don't try to take early on is kind of like we moved out from a lot of the Christian celebrations, um the Christmas, Thanksgiving, Halloween, many commemorations, big birthday bashes and things like that. And we for a period of time because we saw that there all those feasts are strongly rooted in a lot of the pagan type uh, roots, I would say, pagan origins. And so, okay, we definitely know we shouldn't be doing those. So we kind of separated for that. And there's a period of time where like, what do we do then? It's like we don't have all those because we were so used to kind of practicing those. And then we saw all the feasts that the Father gave us. And he actually says, no, these are my feasts. I gave them to you. So all the feasts that are brought into um here, let me share this one as well. All these seven feasts. Let me multiply this. Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, Pentecost, festival of trumpets, Day of Atonement, festival of tabernacles. Now these have some old references to Israel and what they were going through, but nevertheless they all have some kind of a significant meaning of heaven trying to say something to us on earth. And when we learn to walk it out, there's always some kind of revelation to be gotten on those days. For me, the cool thing was like, hey, I want to meet under um, his days, and see what he has to tell us. As, as simply as that. And then just kind of sit back and observe, kind of be there just as a guest, especially when it comes to like the Feast of Tabernacles. Um, it basically here, let me kind of walk you guys through this. Um, where the whole the Feast of Israel, which is announced or identified by the moon. Once we learn the moon and the we identify how to keep the timepiece of heaven. We learn how to match up to where he wants us to be. Because on these feasts, specifically it says on the first month, on the first day of the month would be it's called Rosh Chodesh, basically the beginning of the month. From the first day of the month, count 14 days. On the 14th day will be the day of Passover. The 13th day you prepare for the Passover because the day of the Passover will be a Sabbath to you. Okay, it's simple enough. So the first day it hits, basically new moon. There's no moon. We're waiting for the crescent to show up. The crescent shows up. We're like, all right, we got day one, and we begin to count. 7 days goes by, and we have the half moon. 7 days more go by, we have the full moon. Like, all right, this is our Passover day. We get together and we sit and we take communion with the whole family. That was the time when Yahushua he took communion with his disciples, and he would deliver them new things about for that Passover day because he was saying, "I am that Passover lamb." So the Passover's feast became a restoration, a redemption of a people, earthly people, to the Father. Passover. The days of unleavened bread follows by days of unleavened as people are taken into the family of the Most High. What is the Father's greatest pleasure when He accepts people into His family? Is the people who want to change their lives for the better. You want to become a better person, better father, better friend, better at your work. Do everything with excellence. Days of unleavened bread follows the day. So you're redeemed, you're brought in. Unleavened bread causes us to begin to remove garbage out of our life. All the feasts are basically speaking, it's a form of redemption in every single feast. Next feast would be called first fruits, feast of first fruits. Messiah, when he resurrected, he was called, Paul wrote about him, he became the first fruits to the Father. Basically, he offered himself as a sacrifice, and at the resurrection, basically when the Spirit resurrected his body, he moved into the realm of Elohim, into that spiritual dimension. He was the first fruits to the Father, as the Redeemer of many nations. No longer just Israel, but now everybody who believes on His name can be saved. And then we move. The next feast would be Pentecost. It says count seven Sabbaths. and then count 50 days. Pentecost. Historically, Pentecost is when the commandments or the Ten Commandments were given to Israel on Mount Sinai, and this was the time when the Ruach came onto the disciples, and they begin to communicate to other nations and share the good news with them. Basically, other nations being brought in. So it's a unique. Pentecost is like a when it's a supernatural occurrences start happening in the lands of the believers or the family of the Most High. Fifth feast is it's a festival, or called it's not really a big feast. It's a festival of trumpet. It's the first day of the seventh month. These three feasts are basically they're also within 1 month. The festival of trumpets is on the first month. I mean, on the first day of the seventh month, you blow a trumpet, and that trumpet day that becomes a Sabbath day. That's an announcement that there is a Redeemer coming. Basically, there is a Messiah who's coming not no longer as a lamb, but coming as a lion. So it's an announcement of a wedding celebration, something like where the 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 groom's coming for his bride. Festival of trumpets. Day of Atonement, where there's purification. We again forgo and purify of anything that is hindering or tripping us up. And the seventh is the Festival of Tabernacles. That's the fascinating one, um, where we sit at the table, and this is celebrated for Festival of Tabernacles, celebrated for 7 days, from Sabbath to Sabbath. And this is where that's the one that's kind of like one of the funnest ones. And this is the one that's spoken in the scriptures where it's given exact details of how to celebrate it, which is like decorate the whole place with branches and branches of goodly trees. And so we usually go outside, we have some kind of a canopy, and we bring in leaves, decorations, flowers. I mean, you use your imagination. And this is the feast that's commanded for it to be celebratory. It has to be happy and it has to be joyful. It has to be joyful. The Feast of Tabernacles, it has to be joyful to the point where even if it's you're going through sorrow, the scripture, like to Israelites, Yahuwah told them, like if it's hard time for you to get joyful, get strong drinks, drink so that you can be merry. That's the first time in the scripture where I found like, wow, that's actually encouraged. Like where Christian church usually says no the other way, but like this is the place where it says of the Festival of Tabernacles, mandatory to be celebratory, has to be celebratory. So for us, it's really, hey, we prepare as much as we can, sit at the table and invite family, sometimes some unique friends, but we consider that to be the Father's table. Now, this is the table. Prophetically, we see that it's speaking of the preparation and awaiting the groom coming for his bride, like waiting for that, the feast of the bridegroom. Um, this at least this is kind of like the some understanding revelation we got, and maybe somebody will celebrate and walk it out, and you will see a lot more in there than we were able to see and understand. But each one of those feasts, they speak something, and the heaven always declares something to us when we walk it out. I guarantee that you guys, as you guys begin to walk it out, once you learn to keep His timepiece and the time clock of heaven, you will begin to see unique things that I wouldn't even have considered to share with you. But Messiah came on a specific time clock. Heaven announced His coming. The stars showed up and sang His praises. Um, very possible that He came. He was born around the time of the tabernacles. No, we don't have specific days, but it definitely wasn't in December, how many modern day people celebrate. But it was probably closer to October, September when the Festival of Tabernacles, because that kind of aligns with some of the details that are shared in the scripture about that time. Um, but he came, he walked, he left imprint, and he left the earth on a specific time clock when the heavens struck Passover time, he died and he got resurrected on as the first fruits on the festival of first fruits. Um, it's magnificent. I think it's a beautiful story and beautiful commemoration of it. I know I spend a lot of time on the feasts because I kind of see that the Moedim, which is the because all those feasts kind of take away the word feasts and put in there as Moedim. Because when you look at the feast, why I mentioned feast is because in Leviticus, where it's talking about, and these are my appointed times, when he said, these are my appointed times, he said, these are my Moedims. This is what I have appointed. Um, and for us to know when the appointment is, we got to refer back to the moon and how to keep that timepiece. All right, guys, tell me what you guys need to know. If this is the end of it, or if you guys need to, if you have any additional questions.
That was amazing, Dad. I have 3 pages of notes.
Oh wow.
That was so good.
Yes, we learned so much. Anybody have questions to close it off? We've gone way over time, but that's very typical when we have an incredible topic and an even
True.
more incredible speaker join us. But if you'll have time, please ask questions so we can get the most out of this topic.
Do you guys want me to share the book of Jubilee and Yasher with y'all?
Yes, I will
Yeah,
share
send a
all of
link.
those links. Yeah, and then the few of the
And
quotes that you shared.
and the quote. We need the quotes too. You got a question for us, Keegan? Is that what I'm seeing here?
I don't have any questions, but I just thought how interesting how we go by the moon. And I'm gonna be looking at the moon differently now. Like every time I see him, I'm like, oh, that's what day it actually is. And I don't know, I just thought it was very interesting. I don't have any questions because this is like the first of me
Mm-hmm.
learning about it, and but it was a very interesting talk. Thank you, Edward.
Can I chime in here for a second?
Yes.
Sorry, you guys probably can't see my face, but think about the fact that how interesting that this day landed on the revelation you guys just received, and it is a brand new month.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
Mm-hmm.
that is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like for you guys to and it took us, I mean, it took us years to begin to first learn it and then begin to walk it out. Learn it, begin to walk it out. Sometimes you will make mistakes. That's okay. You have in the next week to kind of correct it. But observe it. Start looking and look at the moon as a timepiece. There's um nothing wicked or dark about it because me growing up in the Christian church, for me it was always the moment you mention the moon, you're like, oh, you worship the moon. Like, guys, we're just talking about the moon. Um, and it's a when you grow up in a conservative church that is superstitious about other things, they become superstitious about everything. And it's sad because you begin to miss a lot of things that are actually the Father wants us to learn, but we just trip over our own dogmas and our own doctrines that get plugged into our brains from a young age, and it takes time to unlearn it. But that verse definitely helped me. Like, hey, you either quit being mistaken or you cease being honest.
Is that a verse or is that a quote?
Oh, it's a quote. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was a quote.
Like-
That's a good one.
Edward 3:16.
Yeah,
Yo.
it was actually is by this attorney Richard Paul. That's his name.
That's good.
That's so awesome.
Edward,
Yes, sir.
I'm curious, and Gemma, this question's kind of also aimed at you because you do a thing with like women's health, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm curious what the significance of the lunar calendar kind of being 28 days and also the female hormonal cycle being 28 days versus the man's hormonal cycle being 24 hours and the sun being 24.
Yeah, I think that's innate. That's the innate design of the Father, and there's nothing you can do to mess with that original design. So when we follow nature's principles, like going to sleep at night, waking up in the morning, all of a sudden our circadian rhythm aligns and our hormones align. So the male's hormone production cycle starts to run accurately. And then when the female eats according to her cycle, which is reflects the cycles of or the seasons of the year, like winter, spring, summer, fall. There's certain foods available in those times. It reflects directly to the four phases of the female cycle within the 28 days. When she follows that, her hormones align. And those are things that you can't mess with. So I think, well, you can't mess with unless modern society starts to mess with it, right? Right now we're kind of seeing a shift of women and men going back to the original design of taking care of their health. And honestly, when you introduce those basic principles, your body aligns to something that can't be shaken. And I love the idea where females are able to align to the lunar cycle because not only is the female's body a timekeeper of what happens every single month because they're on rotation, right? And when something's wrong, they know something's wrong because they're off of that clock, but also the moon can't be messed with. And that operates on the 28-day cycle on average, right? Some days some months women can be off, some months the moon can be off, but women can sync their cycles to the moon, which is just mind blowing to me. I wish I knew the answer as to why, but I do think it is connected to the father designed us this way. The women are aligned with the moon, the men are aligned with the sun.
Yeah,
So fascinating.
Yeah.
even the in the Old Testament we hear of because the ancient Hebrews they understood how to read the signs of heaven. Um, and this is one of the things that Jacob taught his sons. The older ones didn't stick with him, but like somebody like Joseph and Benjamin, they grasped the concept. Let's call it the knowledge of wisdom, which was basically the knowledge of understanding how to navigate the stars and how to read their where they're at in the constellations. Because the heavenly calendar, you guys will also hear the concepts of the wheel within the wheel, basically the alignment, the astrological signs, which throughout the time, the kind of I think the astrology department has taken and done a lot of twisted things with it, but the concepts of the astrological signs, um, you go back to ancient China, they have some information with it, but realistically, it links back to ancient Hebrews that kind of carries the original message of it. And really, all those signs is talking about the story of redemption. It's quite fascinating in itself. But whenever, if you guys remember the story in Genesis of when Joseph had his vision about the stars, the moon, and the sun bowing down to him,
Yeah.
and when his
Mhm.
father heard it, he's like, "Are you thinking that me, the father, as the son, and the mother, the moon's gonna bow down to you?" So
Mm,
they understood clearly the reference. Like obviously, the father is always the son, and the mother's always.
Wow.
yeah, because that was
Mm.
Um,
common language.
Wow.
That was like obviously that was their truth. But
yeah,
the vision or the dream to him was like, how dare you think that the sun and the moon will bow down to you?
yeah.
As in,
That's one thing that offended the father. In fact, like I can't believe you said
completely.
it like that.
I love it.
Um,
Wow.
but there's definitely significant knowledge that we just don't have. And I
Mhm.
mean, in some ways, I understand because it got tainted with heavy occultic practices, but there's still a lot of good information that is there, and I think it's our generations that are beginning to uncover it. And I think there's some keys there that perhaps to begin to get back to the ways of righteousness and the ways of the Father. Because when you practice His things and His appointed structures, you only move to the things that cause life and extension of life, whatever those principles are.
Yeah, just like you said, with compassion and integrity, practicing these things, we can uncover the truth of the
Yeah,
design. And because the truth has been covered up with doctrine and religion and traditions, that we're
yeah,
not clear on what was the actual root, what is the bones, where is the carcass, and how can we move beyond that
yeah.
and really practice these blessings that are given to us in our day and time. Luke, that was such a good question.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you.
Michael, would you like to close us off if anybody has any questions actually to finish? Gio, do you have
Yeah.
any comments? Thank you for joining us again. It's so good to see you.
Yes, sorry, I was malfunctioning. I guess out of curiosity, or not really curiosity, but in my head, as we were discussing, I was kind of like, what's kind of the point of the lunar calendar? Like, why isn't the calendar that we have, um, like, what's the big difference between the two? And as you were kind of talking, Edward, I was kind of realizing, okay, like the whole point of us aligning ourselves with this calendar is to find ourselves in a deeper intimacy with the Lord. Um, and yeah, I guess I mean out of curiosity, as we align ourselves with this calendar, does it bring us into a deeper intimacy with the Lord? Like, from your experience?
Um, once we started walking out, because it's kind of here's what the first things I experienced is once you understand what's his, because here Daniel's in the book of Daniel it says when it's talking about the uprisal of different empires and coming down and tearing down, it says there will arise a man who will not respect religion, he will not respect the gods of his fathers, and he will begin to act proudly against the heaven and against the Kodesh covenant, basically the holy covenant that the Father has with his people. And he says, and he will desire to change times and seasons. So there arises somebody who always wants to shift the focus of people away from what the Father has established.
Yeah.
Once we start understanding the Father's calendar is the lunar structure. The lunar structure it mostly uh, identifies the feasts of or appointed times, the Moedims. Once it was up a point, so once we line up to his appointments, kind of like for you, like, hey, what's your name again?
Geo.
Gio. Okay, Gio. I tell you, hey, Gio, let's jump on a call tomorrow at 12 o'clock if you're free. And you're like, cool, let's do it. The fact that I call you Gio and I want you to jump on a call with you tomorrow at 12, um, uh, there's already something personal. Like it's not like distant. The fact that you are being brought um, into his area of where when he wants to meet you,
Wow.
and the time he wants to meet you. Hey, just line up and honor his days and observe. For me, it was like I don't want to. That's why I kind of we when we stepped. Oh, like I was saying, when we stepped out of the Christian celebrations, a lot of those. And begin to see like, hey, the Father has a lot of the feasts that He says these are my appointed times, these are my feasts. We saw that like, all right, they're His, and this is something that is valuable to Him. And He said He invites us to celebrate with Him. That helped me to understand that He has something to deliver to me on those times. So first off, we're like, we don't know anything about it. So we started reading all this literature Messianic Jews, and we saw like a lot of Messianic um uh I say information and a lot of the content was based off of rabbinical Judaism, which is basically it's like another form of religion. I don't want religion. I just want a relationship. Let's say like I want to see where the Father wants me to be now. Like, oh, you do this, 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 this. Because the law, he said the children, like when I read earlier, that the children will begin to come back and study and learn the law, the covenants, and righteousness, how to walk in righteousness. The point of the law is to help us to walk in righteousness and had to make sure that we act properly towards people and towards Him.
Mhm.
Um, and that's one of the things like, okay, I don't want to. take another form like a rabbinical Judaism because as if they have more in-depth knowledge of it. Some of their it could be they could be very informational, but I kind of keep it at a distance. But for me, my main purpose is to I want to read what the Father wanted his people to prepare and do on those celebrations, and then just sit and observe. See, like, what do I need to learn, and what am I here for?
Right.
Why does He want me to meet Him on this time and then this day? Sometimes you could be there by yourself. Sometimes it could be you and your significant other. Just as long as you're meeting with Him and just seeing what the conversation is supposed to be. Um, I think it's special. It's a deep level of relationship. It's not surface. These feasts cause you to go deeper.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so good. Wow. That's powerful. Wow.
Edward,
Yes, sir.
have you um heard about or like are familiar with the idea of like the nurturing side of God's nature?
Not specifically. I mean, I definitely see that in his character.
Okay, well, in like Isaiah, for instance, there's a couple scriptures that talk about how God cares for like a mother, how there's since birth he carried you, language like that.
Hmm.
And though that doesn't point to a maternal character by any means, it does point towards a nurturing nature, right?
Hmm.
I'm curious, in do you think there's a tie between God's nurturing nature and kind of all these systems between like what Gemma was talking about with how once you align the system to this kind of framework that God's already laid out, that things start to work and they start to click and they start to work naturally. Just
Absolutely.
you're saying as we start to live in kind of flow with this natural appointed time that God has laid out.
Absolutely. I think there's definitely keys there that pushes because when I'm reading through Jubilee, where it's talking about the lifespan of men who begin to line up to his ways, his ordinances. Here, let me see if I can bring that one up. I'm always blown away by that. It's out of Jubilee. Obviously, it's not something you guys are familiar with as of yet, but it's in one of the writings. Um, and again, when I look at that, I don't take it as like, hey, this is the absolute gospel, and it must be like this. But I do see the principle of it that it's applicable. And it says, uh, and in their days they shall complete, and in those days the children shall begin to study laws and seek the commandments and to return to the paths of righteousness. And the days shall begin to grow many and increase amongst those children of men till their days draw nigh to 1,000 years. It doesn't say that those Hebrew children or those Christians or those only the ones that go to church or only the ones out of this congregation or of that denomination. No, it says those that begin to walk in the path of righteousness. So, path of
Mm.
righteousness doesn't
Wow.
matter what nation you're from. You are, when you have been redeemed and accepted into the family Most High, He causes or demands you to walk in righteousness. Let me actually finish this one before I go further. And the days shall begin to grow many and increase among those children of men till the days draw nigh to 1,000 years, and to a greater number of years than before was the number of the days. And there shall be no old man, nor one who is satisfied with his days, for all shall be as children and youths. And all their days shall be complete and live in shalom and joy. And there shall be no Satan, nor any evil destroyer, for all their days shall be the days of blessing or barakah and healing. So it means like day by day, when there's a healing, so you're tapping into something that is always renewing and refreshing. That's just probably the reason why the lifespan begins to increase
Mm,
because you're constantly learning to tap into something that is healing and renewing your system.
mm,
So when we read remember the blessing and the cursing when Israel stood before the mountain and they got delivered the blessing and the cursing. You guys remember that part? So he says the blessing, follow these. These will be for the blessing. You'll increase. You will not get sick. You will, two will chase 1,000, or one will chase 1,000. Two put 10,000 in flight. You'll be lenders and not borrowers. You'll be above and not beneath. So the lifespan is like it's like a formula for increase of life.
mm,
And then this cursing, same thing. Like, hey, you begin to disobey, not just by a form of disobedience, but begin to do your the mixing of what I told you, because I specifically did showed you what can cause you to increase in life. I um, he's like choose blessing or like he says you choose. I hey, quick bonus here. I recommend you choose life, but you choose. Hey, and go for it. Um, and so this is for us. It's always a pursuit. But when we see something like this, and we see in Isaiah also, it's talking about the um, living to a long life, where somebody living 100 years is still considered a young man. Um, the lion eating straw like an ox, and children playing with it around snakes, and it's not harming them. So there's a change of society, change of whether it needs still like some kind of a spiritual, heavenly infusion into our society. But I think righteousness is the heavenly character that the Father expects from us. And when there's always righteousness around where you're at, heaven is able to pour more into that environment and into that area and into that body. Um, does that answer the question in any way?
Yeah, I like that. It made me think of Psalm 10. Oh, there we go. Psalm 104. It basically talks about he made the moon to mark the seasons, and the sun knows when to go down.
Hmm.
So cool.
Yeah.
Clearly, exactly.
Yeah. No, it's like us just aligning to his ways. And there's many things that you guys will learn that I would be glad to hear from you later on. But um, hey, it's all about us uncovering things, learning, and seeing what we need to be doing as his people. And don't be afraid to because like for example, like the heavenly timepiece, the Chinese history, they have a lot of historical and ancient writings that would be beneficial to us because they were based on righteousness and they were based on the original history.
Wow.
Um, they were just so disconnected so many centuries or so many millennia from the Western world that they preserved a lot. And I think majority of the Chinese they still practice the um, lunar calendar. They're going to the point where they don't conceive unless certain time of the year and certain time of the moon. They go really extreme, whether it's by knowledge or by
Wow.
superstition. But they take it to a different level. But there's a book I forget his name, Jonathan Gray. He wrote a pretty really cool book. And when he started kind of learning more about the history of the constellational alignments, and he started digging. He couldn't find. It goes back to like ancient Greeks, and then it begins to interrupt until he was an archaeologist, like a national archaeologist, like licensed archaeologist, and he stumbled across a Chinese historian, and they just kind of start talking, and he start mentioning to him about the constellations. He's like, I'm just fascinated by it, but I only kind of get stuck on the ancient Greeks, and they don't have broad information. And when he goes, "Oh yeah, no, we have a lot of that." He's like, "Oh, that's super simple." He's like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He's like, "And all these symbols." He goes, "Oh yeah, they're all aligned." And he's like, "Tell me about it." And he says, "Well, there's this woman who's a student of it, and she can tell you about it." And when he talked to her, she literally told him the story of redemption and salvation through all the constellational signs. And he looked at her as somebody who, I mean, she wasn't a believer. She just fully from Chinese, did not know anything about Western religions or anything like that, but told the full story of salvation just using the constellational charts that is commonly seen. Um, so there's definitely something there that the things that we just forgotten or that has been buried. And I think perhaps the reign of the Catholic Church also kind of extinguished some of the information, whether for good or for worse, I'm not sure. But I think it's up to us to learn about it and find out.
Wow. That's so good.
It's in
Wow.
other terms, those constellations, like we learned before, is termed the heavenly scroll.
Hmm.
Written
Hmm.
in the heavens. It's another way to understand that it goes through a loop and there's a story there. It's just modern day obviously has changed it to be its own story, but there is a story there, and the significant figures in our scriptures, like Noah. Um, wait, was it Noah? Someone help me. Was it Noah? Oh, Abraham and Yahushua
Right.
were all figures that they knew the significance of that individual's birth before they were born because they knew the significance of that moment in the heavens. And for some reason, that
Mm.
spoke to them multitudes, even though that child hadn't even breathed his first breath, it hadn't even spoken anything, but they knew that that individual's historical significance, the things that they would do in their life, was already written in the heavens. They already knew the magnitude of what they would do to shake the world and shake history. And we now know that those people did shake history, because we know their names today. But I think like
Wow.
those instances in particular are so mind blowing to me that it can't turn me away from the study of this. It's so
Right.
deep and rich. We're barely scratching the surface, and I'm so curious what more can we learn if we, as a community, devote ourselves to the practice of it and allow the Father to reveal us deeper wisdoms that can be understood.
You
Here's
know,
another. Oh,
Edward,
sorry.
can
Go
I
ahead.
say something really quick?
Yeah, go
So,
for it.
two things. You guys, we could probably go on for like 5 more hours talking about this, but there was some questions that were brought up, like what is the significance and like what did we see? Many, many different things, but we saw as a family that changed, right? But if I could point out one thing, this world is all about divisiveness. Divide, divide, divide. The Father said, no, I'm all about the family. And what does he call us to do on every Sabbath? He says, men, take your authority, gather your children, take your wife, and go talk to them, go eat with them, go fellowship with them. Okay, if one thing I could point out, I could say that my family, the reason we are so strong and the reason our children are have connection with us as parents is because we have set an example of like what does authority look like. Where do you go to receive your wise counsel? They saw dad reading scripture, they saw dad praying, so where are they going to go? Are they going to run to some advisors, some college professors, some whatever, or are they going to go run to the family? So I believe his original creation was family, was unity, community, and that's the whole point that he draws
So good.
in every single one of the feasts. He's like, no, come gather. I'm your daddy. Okay. The second thing I really wanted to point out was there was a question about like cycling and how men and women, what are the benefits of them? Many, many, as a health coach, as that's what I do, I could tell you many benefits, but I'll give you two. For male, try to rise with the sun and go to sleep with the sun. You will never need testosterone replacement. You could thank me later. Second thing, for a female, if she was to align to the way that the moon cycle goes to her eating, and she aligned to her female cycle to the moon, and eat on the days that she's supposed to, and not eat on the days she's not supposed to. Okay, I have a whole course on this, but the point is that she will never suffer with parasites, bacteria, fungus, molds, growths of all kind. Body naturally knows how to get rid of things. On full moon, why do parasites go very active? And you'll see people watch the hospitals. Why are they all filled on new moon?
Mm-hmm.
And that's me just speaking from the like kind of like a medical perspective. But science has it all so much deeper than what we give credit to, even in scripture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, anyways, I could talk 4 hours on this, but I just
So
kind of thought
good.
I'd chime in a little bit.
Okay,
Thank
I have
you.
one more thing that I want to share with you all before I okay, can you guys see this page? Sefer?
Yes.
All right. Um this is a so this ministry is there out of Seattle, I believe. Um so the cool thing with this is they have 87 books. 81 canonized and 8 that are or 6 considered to be inspired but historically significant. And this comes with a restored name, so like the name of the creator is restored to the way it appears in the manuscripts. So everything that's in the manuscripts that shows up, they kind of put it into the like translation. They took the books such as Book of Yasher, Jubilee, Enoch, and then all the apocryphal books. There's books, a little few more books about in Daniel's story. I think Book of Baal and the dragon. There's like a few of them, but it's from Daniel's time, like when he was in Babylon. But they just never made it to the regular scriptures because a lot of those books they were deemed by the Catholic Church not to be significant enough to be put to people. They didn't trust the people that it would be beneficial to them. So this ministry, they took it. They're like, hey, how about we let people decide? We're gonna put it in there and let people read it. If they want it, good. If they don't need it, then they can forego it. But if you guys have the funds for it, but they have an app. I got an app. It's like I think it might have been like $50 when I got it. I don't know what it is now. But you can download it off your phone or your iPads. Um, I bought it like 10 years ago, and I love it. The fact I can always flip to it and I can always read it. They keep updating it. I think they got already a lexicon in there, so you can click on things. Kind of, they're expanding it function of it. But you guys will absolutely love it. I think they use the 1611 um, the manuscripts to translate from. So it's one of the commonly accepted ones, but. The combination and the compilation of books in there is awesome, like absolutely awesome. You guys will it'll be beneficial to you all.
That's
If you
so
have the
good.
funds, if you want to give yourself a gift, this is a great one.
Wow. Thank you for that. So
Absolutely.
much wisdom. Well, I think if that's everything, I'll close us out, Edward.
I'm
Thank
good.
you so
Yep.
much. Yeah. Thank you for your wisdom. It's cool. I'm just reflecting on this group and everything we're learning. It's crazy how, we kind of started out just like talking about essential oils and some things, and now we're like evolving and there's real like revelation and wisdom tonight. Um, and so thank you for everyone who joined. I really hope y'all took away something and learned something. That was really special. And so I really appreciate it, Edward. Um, that was really, really good. So um, yeah, I hope you guys took some good notes and just reflect on this, meditate on it, let it marinate. And I hope this stirred some things up. But it is really fascinating to see how everything kind of connects back and how all creation kind of points to our creator. So I think that's really fascinating. Next month we are going to be doing a topic on the masculine and feminine fathering and mothering yourself, which is going to be a really fun topic. We'll probably find a way to incorporate the sun and the moon in that as well. But it's going to be two different topics. The first will be on fathering, the second will be on mothering. And so Essentially, that's going to be about your parents being the floor, the hardwood floor to your life, and that you get to, there's no ceiling to your life, that you get to build up to the next, and then give your children that next level of that floor where they get to the same thing. So fathering and mothering yourself, it's going to be really fascinating. And then we also have the retreat coming up. I believe it's going to be around October, September, and we'll, like I said, just stay updated in the group chat or the Instagram if that's something you guys are wanting to be a part of. But that is going to be, we're going to be taking some polls and some votes on that, and that's going to be a 4-day all submersive retreat where we're just going to be learning and growing the masculine and the feminine in scripture, in wellness, in really, really good natural food, and learning new skills, in working out, in classes and teaching of all different sorts. And so we've been putting in a lot of work. We visited and the farm where it's going to be at, and we're collaborating with this amazing regenerative farm. So we're putting in a lot of work right now. And so stay tuned for that. But I hope y'all have a blessed rest of your evening. And I'm so grateful for all of y'all and just for shared growth. This is really special. So thank you so much, Edward, again. And I hope everyone has a blessed evening.
Thank you guys. Good to see you all. Thank you all so much.
See ya. Have a
So
good
good to
night.
see you all.
Thank you.
See you, Keegan. See you,
See
Gia.
ya.
Bye, guys.
See you, Luke. Bye, Gemma. Edward.